This is Quarina, and you're listening to Bold, Brown and British, a weekly podcast where we discuss what it means to be a brown person in a Western world. We've spoken about colorism, third culture identity, and dating, amongst many others in this podcast. So if this sounds like the type of content that you want to hear, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts from. You can also message us on Instagram. The handle is @BoldBrownAndBritish, or drop us an email via our website at www.boldbrownbritish.com. So without further ado, let's get on with this week's episode. Here's a conversation I never expected to have, but I'm kind of glad I did. Beekeeping. Yeah, you heard me right. Beekeeping. And honestly, it's just one of those things I never even thought about before. Like, who are these people who look after bees? Why do they do it? And what could possibly be so interesting about insects bossing around? But let me tell you, once you start learning about bees, it's like peeling back layers of something intricate and super fascinating. And believe it or not, there's a lot that we can learn from bees and their keepers when it comes to society, community, and even identity. So hello, my wonderful samosas, and welcome back to Bold Brown British. And today we're bringing you on a deep dive into the world of bees, what they can teach us about how we live, work, and support each other, especially as people navigating life as brown Brits in this modern, ever-changing society. So let's get into it. So here's where it all started. I met someone, a beekeeper, and we got chatting. They told me about how bee colonies work. And imagine this, tens of thousands of bees all working together in this perfect organized system. There's a queen, obviously, who everyone assumes is running the show. But the truth, it's not a dictatorship. The hive is a collective, harmonious operation where every bee has a role. Workers, drones, nurses, foragers, and they're all interconnected. And it's got me thinking about community, because for many of us from brown families, the idea of it takes a village is so ingrained in how we live, whether it's in our aunties chipping in on how to cook for a big family wedding, cousins taking care of younger siblings, or parents working long hours while extended family supports us back at home, where community has always been a cornerstone. But bees take this to a whole another level. Every bee understands its role, but more importantly, they understand the role of others. The forager isn't trying to be the nurse, and the nurse isn't competing with the worker. They focus on their strengths, and because of that, the hive thrives. Compare that to how our modern society works, especially in Western cultures, where individualism reigns supreme. There's this constant pressure to outdo, outperform, and rise above everybody else. And we're told to focus on personal goals and celebrate individual successes. But bees, they remind us that real success happens when we think beyond ourselves. It's not about how much honey one bee can make. It's about whether the whole hive has enough to survive the winter. And imagine applying that to your own lives. What if we saw our families, our communities, or even our workplaces as our hives? What if, instead of competing, we worked together to create collective progress? Think about the possibilities if we truly learned and leaned into a hive mentality. Whether it's building businesses, supporting creative ventures, or tackling societal issues, we'd go so much further by working together. And I know, okay, I get it. It is so much easier said than done because life gets complicated. People disagree. Egos get in the way. But bees show us that it's not possible. They prove that unity doesn't mean uniformity because each bee brings its own strengths, and that's what makes the system work. When we dive deeper into this idea of the queen bee, for example, there's a huge myth around it. You think that she gets all the glory, doesn't she? In pop culture, we hear queen bee, and it's all about being the boss, the center of attention, and the one that everyone revolves around. But if you really look at how bees function, you realize that the queen isn't commanding anyone. She's just doing her part, and the workers are the ones running around the show. It's a total myth, this idea of the queen as an all-powerful ruler. She's there because the hive supports her. Without the workers feeding her, cleaning her, and tending to her eggs, she couldn't survive. So think about how this applies to our human society. We're often told to aim for the top, to be the leader, to be the one that calling the shots. And especially as brown British, this has added layer of pressure to prove ourselves, to break barriers, and to be the first in spaces that weren't always designed for us. And while ambition is really important, the queen bee myth can be so isolating. Leadership, as the bees show us, isn't about being in charge. It's about interdependence. It's about recognizing that success is never a solo effort. Whether you're a manager in a workplace, the head of a household, or leading a creative project, your role is only as strong as the people around you. And here's where it gets really interesting. In bee colonies, if the queen isn't doing her job, if she's not laying enough eggs or keeping the hive productive, the workers replace her. They'll nurture a new queen from the larva and shift their focus. And it's not about rebellion, it's about survival. It's about recognizing what's best for the hive as a whole. And that's such a powerful lesson for us, because leadership isn't permanent and it shouldn't be. The best leaders understand when it's time to step aside and let someone else take the reins. They're not threatened by the idea of others rising because they welcome it, because they know it strengthens the whole system. And for us, this means creating spaces where everyone can lead in their own way. It means challenging the hierarchies that keep certain voices out and making room for fresh perspectives. What could we achieve if we moved away from this queen bee myth and started embracing the real idea of shared leadership? There's also this idea of the power of diversity, because here's another thing the bees are brilliant at. Diversity. Did you know that hives thrive on genetic diversity? Bees from different colonies often cross-pollinate, and that mix is what keeps them strong and adaptable. Without diversity, they'd be far more vulnerable to disease and environmental changes. Now, doesn't that sound like a metaphor for society? Diversity, and I've said it before, we've all heard it. Diversity is not just nice to have, it is essential for survival. It's what keeps systems resilient and creative, and yet so often, diversity is treated like an afterthought. Many of us already embody this kind of diversity, right? Like we're a blend of cultures, languages, traditions. Some of us speak Urdu, Bengali, or Tamil at home. We can eat biryani or jerk chicken and listen to Bhangra, Afrobeats, or grime. And while that's a strength, we're often made to feel like we have to choose one identity over another. But what if, like the bees, we embraced all the facets of who we are? What if we saw our multicultural identities as a superpower? Bees don't apologize for being diverse. They thrive because of it. They show us that differences aren't a weakness, and that's what makes the whole system stronger. This lesson feels especially important in today's world, where polarization is everywhere. Whether it's politics, race, or religion, there's so much focus on what divides us. But the bees remind us that diversity doesn't mean division. It means richness, adaptability, and innovation. Imagine a society that worked like a hive, where every individual's unique background and perspective was valued. Imagine a world where we didn't have to just tolerate diversity, but actively celebrated and depended on it. That is the kind of hive that I'd want to be a part of. Now let's talk about something that also hits home for a lot of us. Work. Bees are known for being hard workers, right? The phrase busy as a bee doesn't just come from nowhere. But here's what people don't realize. Bees also rest. A lot. Bees spend a significant amount of their time in the hive conserving energy for when it's really needed. They're not out there 24/7 working, and yet they're incredibly productive. This was such an eye-opener for me because in our communities, rest can feel like a luxury we can't afford or even frowned upon. Whether it's the immigrant work ethic we've inherited or the pressure to hustle and succeed in a society that puts obstacles in our way, many of us are constantly, on the go. But the bees teach us that the rest isn't just important, it's strategic. It's what allows them to keep on going without burning out. And let's be honest, burnout is such a massive issue for so many of us. We're trying to juggle family responsibilities, work, personal goals, and somewhere along the way, rest gets sacrificed. It gets put on the back of the list, if on the list at all. When you think about it, what good are we to our hives if we are running on empty? So, PSA to anyone listening, rest isn't selfish. It is an investment in your well being and, by extension, the well being of your community. So let's normalize it. Let's take a page out of the bees' books and prioritize rest as much as we prioritize work. Here's where things get really serious. Bees are fiercely protective of their hives. If something threatens the colony, predator, disease, or even an environmental change, they rally together to defend it. They don't leave anyone behind, and they don't hesitate to take action. In our communities, we see the same instinct when we're facing external threats. When there's an act of racism, inequality, or injustice, we don't stay silent. We organize, we protest, and we come together to protect what matters. But protecting the hive isn't about reacting to crises. It's about constantly building and maintaining a safe, healthy environment. It's about making sure the hive is strong enough to withstand challenges. So here's the question. Are we doing enough to protect our own hives? Are we creating spaces where everyone feels valued and supported? Are we looking out for the most vulnerable among us? Because the truth is, a hive is only as strong as its weekend member. So finally, let's talk about the beekeepers, the people who care for the hives. They're not there to control the bees or tell them what to do. They're there to support, nurture, and guide. And as a society, we need more beekeepers, people who are willing to step back, to observe, and create the conditions for others to thrive. It's a quieter, more intentional kind of leadership, but it's exactly what we need. So what can bees and beekeeping teach us about society? Well, so much. From the power of community and diversity to the importance of rest and leadership, bees remind us that we're stronger together. So that's it for this episode of Bold, Brown and British. Let me know your thoughts, and if you've got a beekeeping story of your own, please send it my way because I would love to hear you. Until next time. Oh, Mikey, you made it till the end. I'm so happy. Well, listen, if you enjoyed what you heard and you want to hear more, subscribe to the podcast on, wherever you are listening to this. We are on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Deezer, TuneIn, Alexa, you name it, we're there. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode. We also are on Instagram, which houses loads of behind-the-scenes audio snippets, polls, memes, and ways for you to get involved. So go follow us on Bold, Brown and British. That's the handle. And until next time, keep safe, my wonderful samosas.